What's up, Wizards? It's Dev, along with the one you actually care about. We're from Mtg. We like it in Magic. And you know what? Standard gets a pretty bad rap, especially if you listen to me. But both of us try very hard to be objective, and we cannot deny that Standard is actually kind of diverse right now. It doesn't have a problem in that department. A quick look at the meta shows that there's multiple aggro decks in the format you can win with right now. Bunch of mid-range decks from mono all the way up to 3-colored. There's stuff like Reanimator, Blue-White Control, Tempo. They're all represented in this format. So as far as deck diversity, we're kind of looking okay. However, and here it comes, what if you could have more? Because you see, there's a bunch of decks right now that aren't represented in Standard whatsoever that have been integral to Magic history and cultivating good formats throughout time. Sorry, that last line was supposed to be slightly more coherent, and it was supposed to sound like I actually wrote it down on a sheet of paper, even though I didn't. But she started licking my face, and I just kind of went crazy and went haywire. So yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. There's still a bunch of decks that we just don't have in Standard that a bunch of other formats do have right now, and I'd like to see them again because I miss them, and it's a little bit sad. So today, let's look at the 5 deck archetypes that are dead in Standard, and I want them back. Go to the intro, to the song. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. Oh my God, we're back again. A lot of boy band stuff in this video for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about decks that don't really exist in Standard and haven't actually for a while. Most of these, or at least all of them kind of, as I look at my notebook now, haven't existed in Standard for a good minute. And maybe we need to find out why, but we need to get into it because it's probably going to take longer than it should. I've actually had this cooking up in my head for like a year now, and I keep putting it on the Patreon poll, and it finally won, so I finally get to do this video. It's gonna be awesome. And some things have changed since I first conceptualized this. We'll go over that probably in the coffee break is where we'll stick that. But for now, let's go ahead and get to the first deck type that I want to talk about, and that's combo. Happy Feet, Wombo combo. Yeah, we just really don't have like a combo deck in Standard right now, and we haven't for what feels like a good long time. And the problem is, every other format gets to have combo decks, it feels like, right? Like Pioneer has the Grease Fang Parhelion 2 combo deck. And with pretty much every combo I name here, you can argue that maybe people are a little bit annoyed by the fact that these exist in other, formats. But the fact is that they do, and like a bunch of them do. Like Pioneer also has the Indomitable Creativity deck, and it's not the only format with an Indomitable Creativity deck because Modern also has one of those. Modern has a bunch of different combo decks. It's like all combo decks. It looks like when you look at the meta for that thing, man. You got Amulet Titan in that format. You got the Breach combo, which is like, I think 17% of the format right now says Ether Hub. That's kind of a lot. So again, some of these might be issues, problems in their respective formats, but the fact is they exist. They're allowed to be there in the first place. And Standard doesn't really have any of those. And when we do have them, they're kind of banned out of existence really fast. Oh, and by the way, back to other formats for a second. Do not even get me started on Legacy because they've got the real degenerate stuff back there. They get to play stuff like Doomsday and Painter's Servant. And they get to play Cephalid Breakfast, which is just ridiculous. You get to play this guy and you target him over and over with like 0 cost activation things. You mill yourself out. That's his Oracle. I win the game. Like that's allowed to exist in a format along with a bunch of other ridiculous combos. But Standard doesn't even really get one. And part of me is tempted to be like, well, there's a lot of diverse removal in Standard, right? I mean, there's Braid, so you can't use artifacts. And there's Sage Oak, so you can't use enchantments and stuff. And there's all kinds of other artifact, enchantment removal, and blah, blah, blah. But like all those other formats have access to that same stuff, and they get combo decks. So I guess the problem with Standard is that we just don't have a combo good enough, which is really lame because like, that's one of the coolest things about Magic is that cards combo with each other to do really cool, amazing stuff. And like, even though there's like little tiny synergistic combos here and there, like, oh, I want to discard cards in my deck, play Fable of the Mirror Breaker. There's there's a little bit of synergy here and there, but there's not like a big just knockout punch combo like there is in some other formats. And I just like, for a little while, to have one of those in the format, and then maybe we ban it again after we all get sick of it. We'll see. Number 4 is not such a distant memory, but it is still something that we haven't had in what feels like a little while now, and that is Ramp. A good actual Ramp deck. And again, a lot of formats get these. Like Pioneer has the Mono Green Devotion deck that's like 6% of the format right now, and like 16 Ramp cards in that thing, right? And it's also got Lotus Field, which feels kind of like a combo deck. like a little bit, but it's actually just an Emergent Ultimatum deck that tries to tap Lotus Field and then untap it and then tap it again, cast Emergent Ultimatum. It's ridiculous. But that, again, it kind of feels like a combo deck, but it's effectively a rampy deck. And then, of course, Modern, again, I'll just say Amulet Titan for like every single one of these entries, I guess. I don't know why, but Amulet Titan is, again, a combo deck, but it feels like a ramp deck. It plays like 30-plus lands and stuff, so a lot of ramp in it and whatnot. So, again, a lot of formats get ramp decks, even when they got a bunch of other crazy, fast, combo-y, even stuff going on. But Standard, we don't really get a ramp deck. And that's with cards like Atraxa and Titan of Industry and Tyrannax Rex and like all this awesome like 7-drop stuff in the format. We got Cityscape Leveler, we got Portal to Phyrexia. There's all kinds of like huge expensive crap that we could be ramping to. Kaya, I don't know what you're into, but like there's a bunch of 7 to 9 even drops in this format that we could be ramping to, but there's just better ways of doing it. I mean, we got Invoke Justice and I guess like, what is it? Repair and Recharge is the name of that card, but there's just multiple ways of like reanimating huge stuff. So why ramp it into play? That's a reason right there in and of itself. If I play Reanimator, I get to play like Fable of the Mirror Breaker in the 3-drop slot, which ramps me and fuels my discard plan for Reanimator or whatever. But if I play Ramp in the 3-drop slot, I get like Topiary Stomper. It's just not, these cards don't really compare, you know, like on turn 2 in a Reanimator deck, I get like Blood Tithe Harvester and all kinds of cool stuff. But I guess on turn 2, I could just play Mana Dork in my ramp deck. Again, the cards just like don't really stack up in different spots on the curve. And by the end of it, you're just getting buried, you know, like you might get a 7-drop on turn 4 or 5, but you might also either be dead or completely buried in value by then. So ramp is just kind of not working, especially in the face of some, honestly, just better, more streamlined, realistic strategies, again, like Reanimator. But number 3 actually kind of dovetails a bit from number 4, and that is lands. We haven't had a good, solid lands deck in a while. You know, way back in the day, we had cards like Life from the Loam and Crucible of Worlds, and these still show up in Commander decks, but they were big cards in Standard at a time. And even before then, we had decks that had like 35 lands in them. And, you know, we still have these in other formats. Again, I've already brought these 2 decks up, but Lotus Field is a deck in Pioneer that plays a buttload of lands and effectively revolves around a specific land and getting it into place. So it plays like Sylvan Scrying and stuff like that. And then again, I think maybe is this the last time Amulet Titan, you know, a deck that plays like 33 lands and most of its cards are about getting to play extra lands on any given turn and stuff. So, you know, it's really a Valakut deck, but it's, you know, Primeval Titan is important. You know, it's the Amulet Titan deck. You know, we see a lot of like lands decks in other format, and what makes me upset about this one is that it looks like we're super set up for a lands deck in Standard. We just have to get like the last card for it, or are we already supposed to have it and we just don't know like what the deck is? We have Conduit of Worlds in the format. We're about to have Thalia and the Gitrog Monster in the format right now. There's Slowgurk is in the format. Like, look at all of these cards that care about lands. Look at all, they all care about lands so much, and there's no lands deck. We got them legendary lands from Kamigawa that you know, the land. Boseiju, I was talking about them earlier. You just discard those and you get them back with Splendid Wreck or Slowgurk, whatever. I don't know what you're doing. There's got to be a lands deck in Standard, right? But like, there isn't. That makes me upset. Like, maybe we'll get a card in the next couple of sets that ties the whole room together, like the Rug from Lebowski, but I'm not convinced that we'll get it before some important other Lands Matters cards rotate out. And I just hope we get it. Hope we get it. Fingers crossed. Number 2 is, hey, do you know me? Do you know me? Do you know who I am as a Magic player? Number 2 is Aristocrats. Now, here's the difference between this deck and the other decks we talked about so far. And in fact, this is true of the number 1 deck that we'll talk about today too. This doesn't really exist in like any format right now. There's just really not like a Blood Artist deck that matters in a competitive environment right now, which is like so sad. And just like the lands deck, this is a deck that looks like super primed in Standard right now, right? We got Elis Okor, we're getting married. We got Vron in Standard. We got Onikol Anvil. We got like Flesh Taker, Body Dropper. There's just, you know, like even down to cards like that. I wish Flesh Taker was playable. It's so awesome. Look at him. It's so cool. It's so cool. But he's not playable right now. And that's because there's not really, I mean, we have Rite of Oblivion. Like there are signposts for a really good like Aristocrats deck, but there's just no big punch in the mouth. Like there's no way in Aristocrats right now of climbing the top rope and giving them the elbow from the sky. You know, you just can't do it We don't have anything like Rally the Ancestors, like a big finisher that was important the last time Aristocrats was a real deck in Standard, which was like 8 years ago at this point. It was quite some time ago. It was like Fate Reforged, which was when we started the channel, which was 8 years ago. My God, time flies, but it really kind of has been that long since, Zulaport Cutthroat or a card like it was a thing in Standard. And we've got all this stuff to set it up, and it still doesn't matter right now, and that's kind of lame. Hopefully, again, all we're waiting for is just one big old finishing move to, kind of tie things up here. And I really hope it can happen while we still have these cards in Standard, because you guys know this probably should have been my number one because it's like my favorite deck ever, but no, not quite. Now, before we get to number one, let's relax, sit down, and have a nice little coffee break. This week on the coffee break, we'll be talking about decks that have sort of made a comeback. They were decks that I thought would be on this list at one point, and yet, here we are in 2023 Standard, and some of these decks exist just a little bit. For instance, Big Red. Lately, since the release of Koth, people have been attempting Big Red again. It's got great stuff like Reckoner Bankbuster to allow it to draw cards, and other wonderful supplementary planeswalkers like Jaya, along with reliable sweepers like Brotherhood's End and Burn Down the House. However, the deck has not seen too much actual tournament play so far. Next up are tribal decks. Now, traditional tribal decks like elves, goblins, and merfolk may exist to some small extent in other formats, but they don't really exist in Standard at the moment, even though all of the tribes I've already mentioned have lords in Standard. However, soldiers decks are somewhat important in Standard, especially in the competitive rank. The third and final deck we'll talk about on the coffee break this week is Solar Flare, a combination control reanimator deck that existed some 15 years ago, and even though people have tried very hard to make it exist since then, no one has been successful in forcing it, until now, where the Atraxa Grixis decks are somewhat popular in Standard. That's all for the coffee break this week. Now let's throw it back to Dev for the number one dead deck archetype in Standard. Tearing up my heart and soul, we're apart, I feel it too. Oh, hey, okay, so, sorry. Number one, everybody, last deck that we just don't see no more is Discard. We haven't had a real Discard deck in Standard, no less, in a really long time. And again, just like Aristocrats, no format actually has one of these right now. There is no trace of 8-rack in sight anywhere. Even with Liliana of the Veil, Standard just doesn't have the discard cards to make this work. I mean, like, Duress is fine, I guess. We've got some okay discard stuff, but nowhere near the stuff you'd really need to make a discard deck work just on the discard part of it. But what the deck really needs is, again, a finisher. That's what all these decks lack. They need a rack effect, a Megrim, or a Waste Not for that matter. Any of these would be great. I mean, we got Dying to Serve, but that really only triggers when you discard cards. It's kind of lame. And I guess we have the Raven Man, which gives you 1/1s that can't even block. That is dumb. So we just don't have enough to make a discard deck work right now. And it's like kind of lame. Like, ever since I first sat down to play Magic in 1995, discard decks have existed, and yeah, they're annoying. Like, Mind Twist was a card that existed, Hymn to Turak was a card that existed, and I don't necessarily want to play against those anymore, and it does kind of suck. I guess maybe Wizards decided it wasn't fun to have your entire hand torn apart before you could play it. It doesn't sound super fun, but for a long time, discard from, Hypnotic Spectre on day one of my Magic the Gathering experience has been a big part of the game, and it just kind of sucks not having a deck that's dedicated to doing that or punishing it when it happens or anything, and we haven't had that in a really long time in almost any format, it feels like. And if we did have an effect like Megrim or something like that, then it would punish some really good cards in Standard right now, It would punish Fable of the Mirror Breaker, which a lot of people are playing. It would punish like Rafine or any other conniving thing when they discard the card. Blood tokens when they pop those and discard the card. There's a lot of things people are discarding cards to right now. So again, just a Megrim effect would be sweet. Or again, Waste Not, back to that card for a second. The cool thing about Waste Not is that it actually first came into being because it won like the community makes the card thing like way back in 2014 or 15, something like that. It was a minute ago at this point. But again, Waste Not exists because the community made it through a series of sort of surveys that Wizards did. What would you like your card to do and all that? And the community at large came up with this, which means again that the community at large must kind of like them some discard. So why don't we have it in our standard? That's about it, actually. This feels like a shortish one today. I hope you guys had fun. And if there's any deck archetypes down there in the comments section that you want to point out that maybe you missed that I didn't get to here, go ahead and shout those out too, because there's a lot of different kinds of decks in Magic. Everyone just thinks, it's aggro and mid-range and control. But no, there's like 50 different deck types. So if you miss anything, let me know down there. But that may be it, Stanley Ipkiss. But we got a lot of content coming up for you. Make sure you're subscribed because our next video is going to be me showing you what's in this box. It's the 2023 Mtg Cube. We've changed a lot since the last time you've seen it. And I know a lot of you really want to see it. I get comments all the time like, show us the cube. So I guess I'm going to do that for our next video and then streaming on Sunday night. So check out the twitch.tv/SPMTGdev if you want to join us over there. And if you want to support the channel, check us out on patreon.com/SPMTG. It's just $1 a month to join over there. That is 5 times less than a YouTube membership, which I don't offer yet. I probably won't though, because I don't get it. But if you want to if you want to support the channel in any way, it's just $1 a month. Head on over there to Patreon. It helps a lot. Like a lot, it does. But aside from that, I'm more or less done ski for this one ski. So I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from the place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.